So, before we get stuck into this week's particularly girthy episode, I want to take a moment to thank every one of the listeners to this podcast that make this more than just a couple of idiots shouting into the void. Recorded over a few hours on a suboptimal microphone from a hotel room at a convention, this episode is a primary example of exactly why I love doing this podcast and why I will continue to sit myself down in my recording space once a week and serve you all up a heaping helping of sincerity and vulnerability, all slathered in our patented spicy dick joke sauce. The following was an interview I did with a friend of mine that happens to be both an incredibly talented digital artist working in the gaming industry, but also the parent of an addict who is currently still battling with the worst of her addiction. Over the next 2 hours, Doug and I speak about gaming as an industry, the nature of having fans in a pretty tiny niche, the resiliency needed to be the parent or loved one of an addict, and the trials and tribulations of watching someone you love continually fall prey to their addiction. It is a heartfelt, vulnerable, insightful, and at times humorous look at exactly what this podcast is trying to speak to on a weekly basis. I hope you'll join us for the entirety of the interview, as these episodes are by far the most rewarding for me as a content creator to produce for you, our audience. Thanks so very much for spending some time with us, and I hope you find this episode as rewarding to listen to as I did creating it. Welcome to the Save vs. Poison podcast, the podcast dedicated to gaming, general geekery, and enduring sobriety in an ever-maddening society, with your host Will and two guys that probably live under his stairs. If you're an addict, know an addict, or are just interested in exploring the outer mysteries of geekery, you're in the right place. Without further ado, let's get to the show. Just slipped one past the goal and suddenly, boom! Oh. Prego. That's all right. That's okay. Welcome back to the show, everybody. My name is Will. I am your host. Joining me tonight, he's a dirty, filthy St. Louis Blues fan who lost a bet, which is what brought me out here. I don't know who the winner in this is, but right now he's sitting across from me in full Blues regalia while I'm only wearing the one Colorado Avalanche shirt. He's my friend, Doug Hamilton. Doug, what's going on, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm happy to see that. Wait a second. I'm not happy that you won the bet, but I'm happy at the results of the bet.
Yeah, what is that? Like I win a bet and then I have to spend money, but I get to see you guys.
That's a good deal.
That feels like a good deal, but like my bank account looks a little more drained right now than it should.
Yeah, well, I work as an artist, so mine never looks good.
Never looks good. I'm going to need you guys to come to Denver sometime.
I'd love to come to Denver. I went out for an Avs game, it's probably been 15 years now, where some friends in Colorado were like, hey, we got tickets to the Avs game on Saturday. I'm like, I'll take them. And they're like, you live in St. Louis. I'm like, but I have a car. So it was an afternoon game against Dallas, and they sent me the tickets out, and me and a buddy drove out and went to the game that afternoon.
That's all right. So in the warm up conversation, we have literally talked about you being now a Blues fan, which is painfully obvious to anybody that has to look at your bulge right now. You were an Avs fan before that, and then before that you were a Detroit fan, but you've always had the Colorado Avalanche, the St. Louis Blues as home. That's home team.
The Blues are always my number one team. I love the game so much. So there's just other teams that I'll follow because they have great players. Like when I followed the Avs, like we were talking about earlier. You know, the Adam Deadmarsh and the Hayduk and the Sakic and the Forsberg and the Waugh and Bork at the end there. And, you know, it was just great hockey, and I loved watching it. And what brought that up is I set up my Avs jersey got stolen out of my car because I had gotten an Avs jersey like the year before, and it was gone. The Detroit part, I mean, it's hard to say I like Detroit, but I always loved the Russian hockey players. Yeah. And like I mentioned, my daughter's named after a Russian hockey player. But Detroit was the first one to bring in a bunch of Russians, and they had like 5 of them playing, and they were so good, and they're fun to watch, like, you know, Fedorov and Kozlov and Konstantinov, and, you know, it's not so much about the team as it is great hockey players.
Yeah. You play the sport, you're a fan of the sport. Like, as much shit that you sling as a Blues fan in favor of the Blues. One of my favorite Stanley Cup commercials was, I want to say like 05, 6 or 06, 7. And it was back when ESPN had coverage, and they had this blurb of a bunch of hockey players playing puck and everything, and there's this crowd chanting in the background in unison, and it's there. Hockey is meh, we are all hockey, blah blah blah. The very last line was, "We are all one big hockey family, unless you have the puck," and I love that so much because I find so many different people in my life that have a connection to hockey or still play hockey. Like my plumber, one of my electricians that helped with doing the basement. The way that I met, actually, the way that I introduced myself to you was knowing that you were a blues fan. So when coming up to you and being able to talk about geek, but also being able to talk about hockey, yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird bridge
that.
because the geek side doesn't normally cross with the the sports side.
No, not always.
Right. Because there was time, I think it was my 40th birthday party, where I had my gamer nerds coming, and I had my hockey guys coming, and they all sat at separate tables, and within about 30 seconds, one of the hockey guys had broken a beer and dropped shit on the floor, and and the nerd guys are all quiet, sitting over in a corner.
These goddamn barbarians.
Pretty much, yes. And that's what it looked like, because my hockey guys are big, rowdy dudes still, that we're all in our 50s. They're big, rowdy dudes,
Yeah.
and my geek guys are still quiet and sit in the corner.
Yep. I've been noticing that there it has been more like cross fandom. Like I've met a couple of geeks who are like really big into football or baseball. But yeah, I still think that that's a pretty big cultural delineation. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because there's only so many hours in a day.
Well, and you start getting guys like Henry Cavill, Superman.
Yep.
And he's like, hey, I play miniature games. And people are like, what?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. And all of a sudden, he's literally hoisted to Superman status.
Yep.
And I love it.
Literally has Superman chest, shoulders, and arms, and loves painting him some custodies, which is very cool.
Paints toy soldiers also.
The amount of coverage that he got, that was really kind of like the interviewers all looking at him with one raised eyebrow, going, "Really?"
Right.
Yeah. That was it was fucking charming.
It's amazing. I love it. Yeah. And he's not shy about it. It's like Vin Diesel with his Dungeons and Dragons stuff. And everybody like, what? I'm like, this is great.
Yeah. This is so good for exposure. Like, we don't have to be in the basement and in the closet anymore.
Right, hidden away.
We get to be nerds in public.
I'm older than you. In the 80s, it was, they're like, what do you, devil worshippers. No, we're actually just reading books and making stuff up and not getting in trouble. Your star athlete over there got drunk and drove into a tree or something like that,
after he got his cheerleader girlfriend pregnant. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And we slayed a couple dragons and had a couple of meads at the bar, and that was our Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, we drank too much Mountain Dew and ate too many Cheetos.
That's exactly what it was. The volume of Mountain Dew that we went through,
copious.
But now it's it's all more mainstream, so it's been a good thing and a bad thing. But for me, it's my mom was proud to see that all those soldiers that she bought me in the 80s that they were getting painted, and it was good. So I'm happy where it's evolved to.
It was interesting to watch the evolution too, because when you were a kid, or when you were doing it, in the decade before I got into it, it was the whole devil worship thing. When I got to it, it was just sort of something that would peer group exclude you, to the point where I didn't tell like girls I was dating for like 6 months. Like, they'd have like emotional buy-in into who I was as a human being before I would like that was the skeleton. My wife currently is here at the convention with us, and all that I can think is, thank you so much for letting me buffer that first 6 months before I told you, hey, I have toy soldiers. Hey, I put on ridiculous looking clothing and go hit other dudes with foam sticks and pretend that I'm Sir blah 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 on the weekends.
I can relate to that. when I have brought a date home, or they're like, "So what do you do?" And I'm like, I think we're probably done, aren't we? No, because like there's always a way to try to figure it out. I was like, well, I'm an artist. Oh yeah, well, what kind of art? That sounds really cool. What kind? I make toy soldiers. Toy soldiers, action figures. You make action figures? Yeah. Do you play with them? Well, yeah. Like in 40-Year-Old Virgin.
And now I'm painting his silver pants blue.
That's right. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that one before.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I love the idea of calling them action figures and me just wryly looking at them and going, they don't do much action. There's no kung fu.
They're having about as much action as I would get when I told them what I do.
That's exactly
not much.
Doug, how's your con going so far, man? We're only like day and a half in.
So my con's going great. This is a home show for me. We're here in St. Louis. I live about 15 or 20 minutes from where we're at right now. It's the last show of the season for me, and I've had a busy couple of months. Normally, I don't do a lot of shows, but my company has realized that they like having me at shows. There's a lot of benefits. People like to come and talk about the models, about the game, about hockey, and I don't have a problem talking to them about it. So we did Gen Con in August, which is a big deal if you know anything about games. That's probably 60,000 people.
It's the big game convention.
Yeah. So that's basically a week for us, with setup and everything, and a little bit of time to recover. And then the owner of my company, Matt Wilson, he and I went and did an event out in the New York, New Jersey area. It was kind of a small event, and it's not something we've ever really done where he and I went to something just the two of us, but it was an introduction for the new version of our game, Warmachine. Right after that, we had decided to send a couple of employees to the World Team Championships, which is a special format where every country sends at least one 5-man team, and they play against another 5-man team. Whoever wins 3 of the 5 games advances to the next round. But it's a big deal. It's often in either Belgium or in I believe Poland. It rotates around, but in Belgium a lot. They've been doing this for over 10 years now, and we've never sent anyone for a variety of reasons. But we were finally at a point where we're like, all right, we're going to send a couple people out. And they had asked me about a month earlier that we're talking about sending a couple of people to the WTC in Belgium, and you're our first choice to go. Do you want to go? I'm like, yeah, I do. And so they're like, okay, well, and some of it is because I get along well with the community, but also they know I can travel. My passport's ready to go. I'm good to go. I've traveled before. I've been to Europe a couple times for Warmachine. Usually it gets turned into a vacation also, and
Sure.
It's just another chance to interact with international players or promote the game or me to see something really cool.
I mean, if you're going to hop the pond, take advantage of everything you can.
That's
right?
and that's what we did. So John Swinkle's our convention coordinator. He and I went over. We did WTC, had a great time. I think it's about 300 players, and it was at a resort. It's off season, so the resort's kind of empty. So we kind of had the run of the place. They provided meals, like buffet style meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Damn.
The bar was open at 10 o'clock in the morning until midnight. I mean, it was a really cool setup, and we got to go. People were excited to have us there, and it was a big deal. Not only did we do that though, but then we're like, we're going to rent a car, and we're going to drive from Belgium down through France and do some stuff in France, and then back up through Belgium and to the Netherlands for a few days, and eventually we'll go home. And that's what we did. We had a great time.
That's awesome. I mean, getting to have a con in your backyard, that's very cool. Getting to travel for geek work.
Yes. For somebody to, I'd never really been out of the country. When I went to high school in Puerto Rico, but that doesn't really count. But I hadn't even been out of the U.S. I'd been all over the U.S., but the opportunity came up not too long after I started Privateer to go to the Czech Republic for an event that they wanted me as an artistic guest. And so that's when I got my passport. Well, about a week after I got my passport, St. Louis was playing up in Vancouver, So I was like, maybe I should try my passport out. So I met up with my friend Jeff McMartin. He may or may not know him, Warmachine player.
Oh yeah. I know Jeff.
Well, Jeff and I met
Jeff
up
and I are buddies on Facebook.
Super great guy.
Yeah, super great guy.
So
loves the tacos.
Yes. So we went up. We saw the Canucks game and the Blues game, and we've done that 2 or 3 more times since then. We try to do it every year.
That's awesome.
We have a group now that does that. Like past January, we were going to do. St. Louis was playing Seattle for the first time on a Friday night, and then Vancouver on Sunday. So we were going to do both games. We did do the Friday game in Seattle, but the COVID border situation, we didn't want to risk getting stuck.
Man,
so
your team playing a new team to the league. I found that when Las Vegas came into the league, the very first game against the Avs was in Las Vegas, and it happened to coincide with a good friend of the show, Russ's 45th birthday.
Nice.
So we flew out to Vegas.
That's awesome.
Had that as a weekend, and the weekend all totaled wasn't great, but that particular part of it was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
The locals were so incredibly excited to have not only a major sports team in their backyard now, but they were really jazzed about hockey, in particular about hockey. So their arena is located behind New York, which is at the south end of the Strip, which is they really built out that area to be fan accessible. There's a ton of restaurants, shops, great, if you're into the bar scene. This isn't exactly it's kind of off brand for the podcast now, but back then, being able to go bar hopping in Vegas at the end of a game and have the drinks not be the standard 7x markup of if you're not gambling in Vegas, that was so much fun. We met a lot of locals and just had a great time at the game, even though the Avs got blown out 7-0.
See, we won 4-0. But see, that's great to hear about Vegas, because in St. Louis, nobody goes downtown. You go in, you see the game, and you get the hell out. Just because we per capita we're the highest crime rate in the country, so it kind of sucks because we don't have that kind of setup like Vegas would, or even to some degree. I mean, Vancouver or Seattle, at least there's not the best cities in the world, but St. Louis just nobody goes. But yeah, we went up to Seattle last year, and I was up there the year before that. And we had gone out to dinner, and the manager of the restaurant was so excited that they were getting a team. He comped all our appetizers. He came by and talked hockey a couple different times, and then that next year, this past January, we went up there, and my buddy Aaron from up there, he had his Blues jersey on.
Aaron GB.
Yeah, and the section we were in was almost all Blues fans, and so every time we'd score, we're going crazy, and we're doing St. Louis chants.
Yeah,
it was just really cool. Flying up there on the plane, there were a group of us that were all Blues fans. We all had our stuff on, and we're like, "Yeah, everyone see the Blues game." And so it was a good experience. I ordered a puck from that game that has a sticker on it that shows the first game, St. Louis against Seattle. And that. So it was a good experience. Things like that are fun.
That's awesome. Speaking of good experiences, my name is Will, and I am an alcoholic.
You're a recovering alcoholic, though, Will, and that's a big deal.
I am. That's part of it.
So one of the things that, not only being friends from gaming, just seeing what you're doing with that is an inspiration to me.
Fuck, dude, right in the feels, right off the bat. You're supposed to say, "My name is Doug. I'm not an alcoholic, but I pick my friend's nose and then wipe them on Will's shirt." That's what I was expecting, but you went right for the fucking feels. Great job.
Fine, we'll redo it. My name is Doug.
This is better.
I'm not an alcoholic, okay? It's fine. I can pick my own nose. Leave me alone.
You know how. You've been trained.
I might do it now.
So, let me turn away so that it's a surprise, at least a little bit of a surprise what side it's coming from. So, back to me being an alcoholic in recovery. Thank you, Doug.
In recovery.
Back to that, though. So conventions are weird for me. I have a hard time at conventions because my standard way of meeting people has always been has been some kind of use of my wallet. Since I've been a geek in my adultness, I have been able to parlay the reasonable living that I've made into kind of using the mooch factor in geek culture, and I say that lovingly, to basically kind of beer and booze my way into circles. And I'm finding that the last two Warfare weekends, which are the two events that I've been to since I've been sober, these have been the two hardest events for me because I don't have, hey, I'm just going to buy a round for everybody over here. Come over, say, hey, my name is Will. I bought the round. I'd love to meet you guys and hang out for a couple of minutes. I did that at every single one of the lock and loads that I did. The entirety of me creating the outdoor kitchen was all in an effort to gather people to me so that I didn't have to, that I didn't have to go like try to pick and choose. I could get as much exposure to other people as I wanted. And two, it put everybody kind of in my sphere of influence in terms of me being able to be exactly the kind of host that I love being. So I talked about this a little bit last year at the end of Warfare Weekend on the podcast, but it's still there in the back of my head. One, there's other people drinking here, and I can now see where the problematic drinkers are, and that's been interesting. But two, not being able to partake in it it's got a weird chilling effect, and it's hard to describe. But I do recognize that in order to cultivate the type of environment that I want around me, I have to either stop trying in general, or I have to develop some more social skills to bring people to me in the way that I most enjoy. So while I'm not struggling personally with cravings, I do miss the ability to use alcohol as a social lubricant, both internal and external.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really drink a lot myself, but at the shows, everybody is like, "Oh, let me buy you a beer. Let me buy you a beer." I'm like, "I'm good."
Yeah.
I don't really even like beer that much, kind of thing. So I mean, I'll do it socially, but I can't sit and just drink and then lose the next day, or not feel great the next day because I drank too much.
Yeah.
I just can't do it.
Yeah.
So it gets a little. I get where you're coming from, because fortunately I have the games where they want to talk about the games.
Yeah.
So I can use that as my lubricant. But when it comes to let's go get hammered or drink this, or like I have booze that I brought back from Europe that was given to me, and they're like, yeah, you got to drink this. Some of my friends might. I just don't have enough interest.
Yeah, if I get to it.
Yeah. I mean, I might taste it, but I have no interest in it.
Would have been gone before I got on the plane, Doug.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Because I know how it works.
Yeah. Really quickly, you said that you're an artist. You work for Privateer Press. What do you do for a living?
So I do work for Privateer Press. In fact, I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary with Privateer Press.
Mazel.
If you don't know what Privateer Press does, we make tabletop miniature games, toy soldiers that people paint. There's rules for it. There's books about it. It's a game you can find all over the world. A lot of people play it. 10 years ago, I happened to know how to sculpt models on the computer, which was something new. And 3D printing was just starting to rear its head and be usable at small scale like that. So Privateer was actually coming to St. Louis for this show that we're at this weekend. And 2 days before that show, they put up an ad for a digital sculptor. And I responded to that ad. I happened to have some friends in town that we had a mutual friend that was working at Privateer, making rules for them. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, see if you can get me 10 minutes with them. And they're like, yeah, we'll give them a couple of minutes. And they happened to send down a guy named Ron Cruzy, who is, to this day, is still my boss, and our creative director at the time, Ed Burrell. They just happened to be at that show. Ron never goes to shows, but he was at that one. We met. They set up to meet him Friday morning. We met for man, as soon as we started talking about World War II games and World War II stuff like that. We're close enough to the same age, and I had my portfolio with me, and he looked through it, and we were 10 minutes in the conversation, and he said, "How do you feel about moving to Seattle?" And I was like, "This is going pretty good, isn't it?" So he said, "Well, Ed's going to come down. We'll talk to him too." And long story short, they came down. They liked my portfolio. They gave me a freelance job to do. They sent me an offer letter a couple weeks later, and a month later, I was in Seattle.
That's all right.
So not a bad deal.
I mean, you made it sound like your current boss, right? Yeah, we'll give him 10. We'll give him a couple of minutes. I had a very Godfather-esque picture in my head of what this meeting. A violin in the background.
Well, so when you're at shows like this, there's a lot of aspiring artists, young artists, good artists, bad artists. They always want to show the work to people that work in that industry. So I know that it can be overwhelming because you guys have things to do at the show, and people want to talk and show them what they can do. And there's a lot of people that would come by and show what they can do, but it just wasn't quite ready for those kind of jobs. And they having seen that at like Gen Con and things like that, I knew it was going to be hard to get time. It just happened to work out, and some of it is because I knew some people that were able to buy me a couple minutes. All I needed was a couple minutes. I knew once I started talking, I knew I could buy more time, and it worked out great.
Yeah.
And especially for me, because I'd been out of school for a year. I was actually at that point I got my bachelor's in digital animation. I was working on a master's in education as a backup plan. So it kind of worked out okay.
That's all right. Okay,
Yeah,
so
not bad.
that answers question number 2.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're okay. All right, so you answered question 2. Question 3: did you set out on your path in digital sculpture to do something in the gaming industry? Was that like goal from the start?
I think yes. I think somewhere along the line I knew what I wanted to do. I mean I started getting miniatures in the 80s, and some years back, I guess it was the late 90s probably, I had stopped up at the game store to play a card game, and there were a bunch of dudes in the back throwing dice, and they had all these toy soldiers and tanks and ships, and they were playing some game called Warhammer. And
Heard of it?
yeah, and they had books with drawings and dice, and they were painting their toy soldiers, and I was like, what is this? And I left the shop that day with a box. I think I had a box of Warhammer Fantasy Zombies, and then about 2 weeks later, a army box of whatever edition they were on, Tyranids, came out, and I was like, here we go. And it was on from that point on. So when I went, and that was, like I said, late 90s, so I would do some trade shows here and there because I was working in transportation, and so I would help companies get their stuff into convention centers, or help them with the transportation into things. And then I would also a lot of times help them with their demo teams. I would get myself and a couple of buddies, and we would just cut a deal. It's like, hey, get us badges, get us our hotel room. We'll do 8 hours a day or whatever, some kind of deal. So I think I was planting those seeds early, and then in 2007 when I went back to school for digital animation, and it was starting to feel a shift towards doing digital sculpting, I think I kind of knew then that as much as I would have loved to work for Pixar or Lucasfilm or whatever that, I knew that I love doing miniatures, and I love the idea of sculpting, even though I'd never sculpted before. I just wanted to create, and it just kind of fell into place at the right time.
Yeah.
And I had drawn pictures and wanted to do comics when I was younger. When I first got out of high school, I was going to school for cartooning. I just got sidetracked with life.
Yeah.
And so at 37,
like you do.
Yeah. And what happened is that at 37, I was working for a transportation company, and we had a driver not show up. So I had to jump in a truck and do a delivery. And I took it over to this grocery warehouse. I had one pallet, and I had a pallet jack. I was about to pull it off, and a driver came by on a forklift and goes, "Don't you dare touch that." And it was a union warehouse, and so his job was to take that pallet off. And he made me sit there for almost an hour. It would have taken 10 seconds to pull it off and get me out of there. But the way he treated me and how condescending he was,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm done. I'm not playing this bullshit. All I wanted to do was get out of there. And at that point, I started looking at doing something. And it took me a few months to find a program that I wanted, and off I went. So at 37, with a wife and a kid, I was changing shit up.
Yeah. Community college, university, art
it was
institute kind of a thing?
It was kind of an art institute kind of thing. Honestly, it wasn't a great school.
Sure.
And I was so desperate to do something different that I think I knew it wasn't a great school, but I still learned stuff.
Sure.
You know, a couple of teachers that I had were really good at what they did. I needed more. The plus side was at 37, I knew this was my last shot at changing things. So I put in a lot of time and a lot of hard work. And the kids I was going to school with, I say kids because they were fresh out of high school. They're 19, 20, 21. They had zero work ethic. They were happy getting B's and C's, which would have been fine in high school. But you're not even the best in your class, and you want to get a job at an animation studio or a game company.
At a big animation studio.
And if you're not even the best in your class, you're sure as hell not going to be some of the best in the world, or in an area. So they didn't have the motivation I did. They told me I was an overachiever. I said, no, I'm really not. I'm just a hard worker. And so that's I just put in the time, and they didn't want to.
It's so fascinating seeing people that have had to work shit jobs that then go back and take advantage of their educational opportunities because they have had to, create a work ethic.
Yeah.
Along the way, and then they apply that work ethic to something that they actually want to apply it to.
100%.
So different.
Even at Privateer, when I first started there, it's a lot of young artists, and while I got along pretty well with people, none of them had ever worked hard. Mm-hmm. They had always been artists. They'd never loaded or unloaded a truck in 100-degree Missouri weather.
Yeah.
For multiple days in a row. They never had to do that hard, backbreaking, unload an ocean container that's stacked from the floor to the ceiling with, little boxes, and they all have to be separated too. Never have to do that kind of work. They'd always just done art stuff. And they were good people, and they were really good artists, but I don't think they had the respect or the appreciation for what they had. Mm-hmm. Whereas I came in, and I was like, some of what I think was a little bit of fear. Like when I was first a privateer, my feedback wasn't real. I don't want to say real good. There was no feedback.
Okay.
I was just like, am I doing okay? I just went cross country.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those guys that needs a pat on the back, but every once in a while, I'm like, hey, am I keeping my job? Is it okay to move my people up here? Or, and there was one day where my boss was like, hey, you could be a little faster. Well, then I realized I was faster than all of them. I'm seeing a guy crank out 8 sculpts in a year, and I'm doing 25 to 30.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm fine. And then when I started to see how my work compared, and there were some really good sculptors there, so that really, being a competitive person,
yeah,
I'm like, man, those guys are really good. I think I could be better. And whether I was or not, I tried to be.
Yeah.
And that, for me, that's all the difference in the world.
That's huge, man. I mean, I've always thought that that a lack of any kind of critique was always worse than negative critique. Because at least with negative critique, you have a direction that you can go in opposition to that critique.
Yeah, and I have no issue with a negative critique. I'm thick-skinned. I mean, you look at the community of Warmachine players, they know how to critique a person.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Negatively.
There's online is a shitstorm. It's always a shitstorm. There's never
it is, and I say that I mean I have way more people that truly love my work.
Yeah.
There's always a handful that are like, this is shit.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what are you doing, Hamilton? This is shit.
I don't like this.
Yeah. And that's where I'm like, hey, buddy, I'm a company guy. They tell me what to do, and it looks like the art they wanted. So,
ta-da!
Sorry.
Yeah.
Paycheck came in.
So, you're at work. What's a day look like for a digital sculptor at Privateer Press?
Well, so I've been working from home for 6 years now.
Yeah.
So way before COVID. Just over 6 years ago, I got a call. My mom was diagnosed with cancer. It was terminal. I was in Seattle. She was here in the St. Louis area, a couple hours outside of St. Louis. My aunt called and said, if you're going to see her, you better come home. And so Privateer said, do you want to go remote? And there were some talks about remote previous to that, but it's just something we had never done. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, are you going to go home? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, see you. Like literally that quick. And I'm like, do I lose money? Do I lose benefits? They're like, no, you just don't have to come in anymore.
Yeah.
And so I within a week, I packed up. Me and the kid packed up, and we drove cross country. We spent 3 months with mom. Had we not moved back, I don't know if I got to see her because it's expensive to fly back and forth.
Yep.
So and then a year later, Dad was diagnosed with the same cancer, during terminal also. But during those times when I was running them back and forth to the hospital, Privateer was so supportive. Sherry, the owner, she would call and check on us. Mm-hmm. Do you need anything? Days where I just had to last minute run my dad to the VA hospital. She's like, that's fine. Do you need anything? Or I'm like, I can't work tomorrow. Okay. Do you need anything? Do you need us to send anything? It was like that all the time. That's also why you'll hear if someone wants to critique our game or our rules, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah.
But talk shit about my coworkers or the owners, I'm going to defend them.
Yeah.
I have reasons to. I'm sure we'll touch on it soon, but when my kid was in rehab, Sherry sent her letters. The owner of the company sent her a letter encouraging her, just encouraging her.
Yeah.
Nobody does that.
No.
So I'll go to war for these people.
I mean, I have friends that will check in on me, but I don't have anybody in my professional life that has taken the time to do things like write a letter.
Yeah, and this is the owner of my company.
Now, of course, a little caveat there. I haven't had to do rehab. It's never been that bad for me. So that might put this a little bit into a little bit more perspective.
And on top of that, as much as we have roller coaster rides with our community, the supporters of Warmachine, we're gamers, we're an odd bunch. The number of people I've had come up this weekend, because again, it's my home show. A lot of people come to see me and hang. The number of people that come up, like, hey, how's your kid? How's your daughter doing?
Yeah.
And they're not doing it to make small talk. They're doing it because they've followed along this adventure because I'm pretty open about that adventure. So people are sincere and checking on it, and again, that the way Privateer handled things gets a lot of loyalty from me. It goes a long way.
That's really good to hear. Just as a kind of not a postscript, like mid-script. I set these questions out to Doug. He didn't answer them before we started the interview, so a lot of this is going to be just him telling me exactly what his responses are without me having any prior knowledge. I am not I'm not a prosecutor or a defending attorney. I didn't ask the questions and then expect an immediate response. I just wanted to make sure that they were all above board. So yeah, that's really good to hear.
It's unscripted.
Yeah, it's well, your part is, mine is.
Mine is unscripted.
But I feel like I always got to make sure that the questions are written out.
Otherwise, and usually we have to run our questions through through HQ.
Yeah.
And
I was curious if that was
your basic questions I've answered before.
Yeah.
Your audience probably hasn't heard them, but some of those questions they're normal for gamer podcasts.
Yeah.
But the other questions that you had for me, those are things that need to be talked about.
Yep.
And I have no issue talking about things because if I can help somebody, the conversation we were having before we started recording.
Yeah.
If I can help one person, man.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of that kind of sentiment in the community that I'm a part of, not that I'm in charge of, that I'm a part of. So yeah. So back on track. The parts of your work that get you out of bed.
Yeah. So on a Sunday night, people are like, oh shit, I got to go to work in the morning. On a Sunday night for me, I'm like, man, should I start working? No, because I get to work on cool stuff. I really do. Even something I don't like is still cool.
Yeah.
And there's almost nothing that I don't like. I'm literally making monsters and robots and weird shit, and then I get to go to a convention and people have things that I've made that they're playing on the table that they want to talk about, or that they painted up, or they've entered into a competition. So it's easy to get out of bed and work on my stuff.
Yeah, I haven't purchased a Privateer Press product in a couple of years, and sitting right over there are the 3 models for the Dusk line that you sculpted. Like, yes. I was like, how could I have a fucking interview with the guy and not like buy his wares?
You gotta support me a little bit.
I gotta do that at least, right?
Yeah, and I appreciate that support.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. I love this game. I've always loved this game.
It's a good game.
I loved the company when I first got into the game. One of my favorite memories of Privateer Press is showing up to my first lock and load, which was 2012. The very first person that Russ played was Jason Souls.
Oh, cool.
Very first person.
Yeah.
We walk in, the Colossals are just being, released and hyped.
Yep.
He's got this beautiful Colossal that looks like a giant leather chair with guns on it. Like, it's all done in like browns and golds, and all I could think is that looks like a leather sofa. I would not want to fight on the battlefield, but if you told me that you could cuddle up with it, all right, maybe.
Yeah.
But we walk up, we're just looking at the new model, and Souls just says, "You want to get a game in?" And Russ, sure, yeah. At this point in time, we have never played with anybody except for the two of us. It's just been the two of us trying to learn the game.
Yeah.
That was such a fun culture shock, but it was so awesome that the very first person that we got to meet and play with at the convention was the lead designer of the games of the game.
Yes. Still.
Yeah, to this day. Yeah. So that was
that
was pretty fucking special. You're not going to get that with Games Workshop.
Right. Exactly right. And it's funny because the Colossals, because I came into Privateer the year after that, but the year previous I was at Gen Con trying to get freelance work, and I was standing in line to get a Colossal, the Retribution Colossal, Hyperion, I think it was. Yes, it was Hyperion. And I stood in line for like 2 hours, and Matt Wilson came by a couple different times, and my press ganger buddies that were with me were like, "Oh, you should see Doug's artwork. It's really good." And Matt's like, "I bet it is."
Sure it is there, buddy.
Yeah, and I just didn't have anything with me, so the funny part is that it worked out okay, but then some years later, I redid some work on Hyperion and also did a new version of it called Helios.
Yeah.
It was kind of just some add-ons to it. But there's been a handful of models where I'm like, okay, we're coming full circle. But yeah, that's a great story, though, getting to play Souls first. Man, Souls is one of those guys, he and I just got along good.
Yeah.
I mean, we still do. I don't see him too often now, but
Sure.
It's always... it's always good to catch up with him and see him. I think like any of us on the art side of things, we're just different. So it's always good to run into one of your own people.
Yeah. No, I get that. Of the stuff that you've created, what do you find you have enjoyed the most?
I mean, there's models that I have that are my favorites. Usually it's some kind of monster. I think the thing I enjoy the most, though, is seeing the models in stores. People playing games in stores. Walked down to that hall down there today where people are playing games.
Yeah.
And I see my models on the table, or they want to show me their models of mine that they painted.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even matter which one it is. They're excited about it, and that inspires me. And brings me. I'm like, man, I got to make more. I got to make cool stuff. I got to. So really, it's that. I mean, I have a handful of favorites, but I've done hundreds of models at this point. Some of them I've probably forgotten because I'm old.
Sure.
But there's a few standouts. There's a couple of monsters, Azrael and Zuriel from Legion.
Yeah.
They're two of my favorites. But then there's some of the smaller characters. There's a like this Amazon feral woman called Iona.
Yep.
She's one of my favorites. She's a thick, beefy badass.
Mm-hmm.
She's got big old legs and broad shoulder, and she's just an ass kicker.
Yeah.
And she looks great. and people love her because they're like, oh, she's so solid, and because for me, people ask, they'll always have, why do you sculpt a model like that, or why do you have that thigh showing or butt cheek showing, or this showing? I'm like, because I live in a real world, and I enjoy the shapes of the models, male, female, monster. There's just a way to make it appeal to people, and so being able to sculpt wild, crazy monster werewolf people, and it's just fun, and I get a lot of enjoyment researching it, making them look cool, making them not your typical fantasy. I don't know the word to use for it, but
well, definitely not tropes.
I like variety. Yeah, they're not tropes. They're like I said, I live in a real world, so I like real proportions, and I like I like gravity, and I try to convey that realism and to my models and their physique, and it's not all the same body type like some models can be.
Yeah. No, I'm totally stoked for the Dusk models. Those are getting painted on stream.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing them.
I want an audience for putting those together and getting some paint.
Well, I'll if you let me know, I'll broadcast it on my page.
Cheers, right on.
People to check it out.
That'd be all right. I'd be all right with that. So a little bit deeper. You have talked about the possibility of animators working for larger studios. Larger studios come with, you would hope, things like the potential for larger paychecks or more responsibility, or to be able to say, that Pixar, I did that Pixar. So what parts of your life have you had to sacrifice to be working for Privateer Press? Because while I love the story of the owner sending letters to your daughter in rehab, that is such an important thing for even like family and friends to do, but to have somebody in your company that's way above you sending that out, that speaks a lot. But there's got to be stuff that you've sacrificed in the litmus that you have for working for a smaller company like Privateer Press.
Yeah, I mean, really, from the start, even before it went to Privateer, there was sacrifice to go back to school. At 37, with, I don't know how long I had been married at the time, but married and with a kid, and in a career at the time that I'd been in for, 15 years, 15 plus. So I was still trying to work full-time and go to school full-time. So there was a lot of missed things.
Mm-hmm.
I went to school every night. I worked every day. Weekends were homework and portfolio work. It was a pretty hyper-focused situation. So there were probably people that didn't get the attention they needed, whether it was Allie or my wife. Moving to Seattle, things went astray. I got divorced in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily because of Privateer, but
sure.
It's all kind of in the same thing. My kid became a drug addict while we were in Seattle. Was it because of Privateer? No, of course not. But the path that took me there, those are things that happened on that path. Mm-hmm. Had we stayed in Missouri and I had stayed in transportation, would those things have happened? Maybe not. Maybe I don't know the answer to that. But
sure.
You can always second guess when something negative happens. You're like, well, what could I have done differently?
Mm-hmm.
What if I hadn't gone after this opportunity? And even now, I'm pretty hyper focused on what I do. I'm pretty linear, working by myself. I don't count on anybody for anything. So mm-hmm. I know that I can leave people behind or do my own thing, and I'm happy doing that.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to deviate from, not because I'm selfish, but just because I can just do everything myself. And some of that could be my age and my generation where, we do like to do things for ourselves. We don't want to count on someone else. We just want to get it done, kind of thing.
You feel vulnerable when you do have to count on somebody else?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
so like this year at Gen Con, we had a great crew. This is the first year where every single person pulled their weight. And in the past, and we only had like 8 of us, plus the owners were helping. In the past, there's been times where we've had 20 plus people at a Gen Con. And I'm looking around and it's still only 8 of us doing any work.
Yeah.
You know, and it drives me insane because if I say something, then I'm an asshole. But we have so much work to do. You know, so yeah, it's hard for me to rely on somebody else or to depend on someone else to try to get something done. I'd rather just do it myself.
Yeah.
And that's not the best thing that's not the best mindset. But I know that things are going to get done the right way.
I mean, if you found a niche where you can work like that, then that's great.
And I have.
I mean, but like if you're in any place that requires a larger level of collaboration,
So when I was working on my master's, there were group projects. Well, I was working on my master's, I was also teaching in a college and teaching general education and that, and it was virtually impossible to assign a group project because there would always be one person that would do all the work, you know, and however many other people were in the group, most of them didn't want to do the work.
Yeah.
And so then the person doing all the work would be upset because they did all this work, and everybody else is getting a similar grade. So I understood that, and then when I was assigned group projects, I'm like, this is going to be a disaster, and it was every time.
Yeah. That's so frustrating that they can't like break out group Look, you're in a group of 3. One person's responsibilities will be X, Y, and Z, and others will be A, B, C.
Well, especially
D,
with
F.
online classes.
Yeah.
You know, online classes, you know, that person can hide behind their monitor or just not show up, and they don't actually have to face their teammates, you know, their project mates. So that could be, you know, relying on the person in that situation. But with my job, I don't really have to rely on anybody.
Sure.
So I get my concept art, I do my project, and I turn it in. I had people ask that, you know, that have been working remote the last couple of years with COVID. They're like, man, how do you do this? Well, it takes some discipline.
Sure.
You know, it takes some motivation. There are days that I don't start my workday until 10 or 11 o'clock, but I also go till 8 or 9 o'clock at night because I don't have to follow normal rules.
Yeah.
But it still might be 10 o'clock at night.
Sure. Slightly lighter fare. Do you like being famous within your niche? Is that fun?
It's fun. It's 3 days every 3 months. You know, I always joke that events like this, I'm a Z-list celebrity for 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, and then it goes back to you know, being obscure and not heard from for a while. So but as busy as the last couple of months have been, I was just telling somebody the other day that I've had my fill of being popular. I'm ready for a winter off, you know, just get some work done, refresh. You know, I've got my fix with all the shows that I've done recently. I'm a little tired. I'm a little worn out. So I'm looking forward to just some normal work days.
I don't think I could get enough of it.
I'm tired right now. We've done a lot, and with the Mark IV release, and there's been a lot of late days. I'm just tired.
Yeah, I get that. I do.
In a good way, though. I mean,
no,
I'm not upset about it. I'm having a great time.
My wife and I have been going through a period of heightened stress because the kids' schedules with the beginning of the school year, with our basement getting finished, with me possibly taking a new full-time position at one of the hospitals that I work at. All of these things are good things, but they're all still stress.
Yes.
They're all, like, good stress is still stress, and
right.
You got to have some kind of tool to be able to deal with all that stuff.
Right. And I've had a great time. I'm not complaining about all the shows. The stuff I've got done just in the last couple of months, it's been amazing. So I'm not complaining. I'm just getting old.
All right. So famous in a tiny niche, that comes with it a little bit of parasociality. You don't know them nearly as much as they know you. Of course, right now, we're adding into that, aren't we? Yes, we are.
Yes,
now, my 16 listeners will know a little bit more
17
about
now.
you. 17 now, yeah. How do you deal with the parasocial relationships where people come up to you and throw out, "Hey, Doug," and then launch into automatic friendship where you know nothing about these people?
Yeah, it's actually tough because with social media, I'll get random messages all the time, and they're all the intents are good, and I answer them, and we might have a conversation, multiple paragraphs, off and on over a couple of months, or most of the time right before a show, it gets busy. Sometimes it's people just asking questions about they want to sculpt models, but then we'll get to a show and that person will come up and they don't look anything like their Facebook icon, so I have no idea who it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
I have a couple thousand follower kind of thing, and I don't remember names well, so I do the best I can.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we start talking about gaming stuff, and it works out fine.
Yeah, your personality is able to smoothly transition between the awkward first few moments and
The ability to bullshit until I can figure out who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it just takes, oh, remember when we talked about this? I'm like, all right, now I know who it is. Yeah. When it's like, yeah, remember we talked the other day? Keep going.
About?
Yeah, you're going to have to give me more than that. Well, yeah, I'm such and such.
Third fact.
Yeah, one more. But it's most people are super excited to talk. Even if it's just about their games or they want to show me what they're working on. As a person that was on the other side for decades, I remember wanting to talk to the artists and the people that design games. So I will never blow somebody off or ignore them. Or I've seen coworkers in the past that they're kind of condescending or they look down on people. I'll never do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that. I've had people that, will you sign my books or will you sign this? Yes, I will. If you want me to sign 100 things, I'd love to do that because the fact that someone wants me to sign something or draw a little picture on their book, fuck yeah, every time.
Yeah.
I just can't say no to that because I'm flattered and humbled by it.
Yeah. When you say that, it brings to mind Big Fish, Little Pond, but Big Fish that is happy to be in that little pond and does not look down upon anybody else, and comes to that position with humility and a genuine enjoyment for
absolutely.
For the
and it's one of the reasons that I do get along so well with most of our community.
Yeah,
is because it wasn't that long ago I was just a community member. I just was able to find a job where I could be on the other side of things, but I'm not going to forget going to the shows and going to Gen Con and wanting to meet artists or have them sign something or talk to them about their art. And I remember most of the time they would take time and talk to me, and I don't forget those things. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I've run into a few of those artists over the years, and I'm like, you don't remember this, but you talked to me at one of the shows when I was trying to figure things out. And that means a lot. So I try to do the same thing for people.
Yeah, that's all my dealings with you. I've never seen you be anything but absolutely open and kind to the people that come up to you. That if I'm in a bad mood or even just a little bit testy, I could totally see how that would be very difficult to
it can be.
To keep up.
So there's a switch.
Yeah.
There's a show mode switch.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's a totally different person, but it show mode takes a lot of energy, because you have to be at a certain level the entire time. Especially like even shows like this where it's casual, but because you're right here with everyone all day and most of the evening, it drains you quick. If I was just working the booth and I'm done after 8 hours, not as bad, but like when we're done, I'm gonna go downstairs and probably play a game.
Yep.
Or if I walk through that lobby and people are sitting there, they're gonna want to talk.
Yep.
And I'm gonna stop and talk to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's cool, man. That's all right. All right, so we've given a beautiful hors d'oeuvre here to everybody. Everybody's got their first course in. Now to some meatier shit. Meaty shit. Now you have already talked about the fact that you have a daughter. that she's been to recovery, that she's an addict. What are your thoughts on, what are your experiences with addiction?
So for me, I don't have any addiction. Like, I've never been addicted to anything. Food, maybe. But as far as like drugs or alcohol or anything like that, I've really never had an issue with that. I have seen it in my family, so I recognize it. And I also, I do have a bit of an obsessive personality. Like, when I'm going to do something, I usually don't half-ass it. So I recognize that, I think, from being around, my dad dealt with alcoholism for a while. I had an uncle that dealt with alcoholism and, some abuse, some drug abuse. So I've been around it, and I was lucky enough to recognize it, and I know that there are things that I just can't do. Like, I've never gambled because I know what could happen.
Yeah.
Because I want to win. I'm competitive, and I'm obsessive. I know how that can turn out. I don't want to do that. I've never done drugs. I've literally never done any drugs. I grew up around them.
Alcohol's the
alcohol. I don't even know all the different drugs that I was around. We talked earlier. My parents were young, and so mom not so much, but dad liked to do a lot of partying. But they also had friends that would come down, and our house was a party house, and there were people doing all kinds of different drugs. People fucking. It was wild, and my mom did a great job protecting us. We probably weren't exposed to as much as we could have been, but we still saw some things that we probably didn't need to see. And I grew up around, I saw people drunk and falling into fire or pits because they don't pay attention, or they think they're leaning against a tree that really isn't there. So I saw a lot of that, and I think I was lucky enough or smart enough to recognize that there are things that I should not do in excess. Even drinking to this day, I don't drink that much. I never really have. Even in my 20s and 30s, I'm 52 now. In my 20s and 30s, my friends are getting hammered. They're drinking a case of beer. I just never did.
Yeah.
And I think part of it, though, is because I didn't want to lose the next day. Being hungover, or the next 2 days. And I thought, as a parent, setting that example would, work out. Hey, here's dad. He doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs. Band. That's not necessarily how it works.
Yeah.
And,
no, it's not.
And for people that don't deal with addiction, it's easy for them to sit back and go, "Oh, where were the parents on that one?" You don't know the situation.
Yeah. There's so much depth to every one of these situations.
And one of the things that I said, even before, either before my daughter kind of, before she became an addict, I like to think that you're teaching them till about 11, and then after that, they're kind of going to figure some things out on their own. You can still guide them, you can still give them advice, but they're at a point where they're going to start making decisions. Am I a bad parent because and I've been asked this, do you feel bad that your daughter's an addict? Do I feel responsible? They're like, yeah. No, I didn't. I didn't do anything to make her an addict. She wasn't abused. She lived in a loving household. She just happened to get in with a crowd that liked to do drugs, and she tried it and liked it. Do I feel responsible for that? No, I don't. Do I wish it hadn't worked out that way or done something different? I do, of course. But, she's been an addict since she was 14 or so. She's 23 now. And I'm the person that hasn't abandoned her.
Yeah.
And pretty much everybody else has. Yeah. Sometimes you just can't give up on a person because, for better or worse, there are people like, well, they're never going to learn unless you let them really hit rock bottom. So what is rock bottom? Sleeping on the street, in the freezing cold or the snow. So as a dad, I'm not letting my daughter sleep on the street in the cold.
Rock bottom's not a singular place. You can have a lot of rock bottoms.
I agree. There's a lot of different versions of it.
Yeah.
The version that was sent to me was, well, stop helping. There are some things that I could change, but stop helping, as in give up. Let her go. Don't let her figure her own shit out. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Is there some enabling in there? Yeah, there was. That's, as a parent, that's hard to not do. But you learn. You learn to not not enable as much. But there's not a booklet that says this is how you handle your daughter who's who's a drug addict. There's just not, and every situation's gonna be different. So you just have to weather the storm a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's fucking terrible.
It is fucking terrible.
Yeah.
I'm inside of it instead of it being external to me. So my viewpoint is always clouded by the fact that I know what my inner addict wants me to do, and I act in opposition to that a lot of the time. But for somebody who is dealing with somebody that that isn't in recovery, that isn't like actively seeking to stay away from their addictions, it's devastating. That's fucking devastating.
So I think your example of when you say you're in the storm, dealing with addiction, I'm in the storm dealing with addiction also. The difference is when you're in the storm, you're spinning with the storm.
Mm-hmm.
You're part of the storm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the middle of it, looking at it going, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And how do I get out of the storm
Mm-hmm.
with her intact? So even now, I can visualize what's going on, because talking about addiction, there's been so many times where I've been to meetings with her, and everybody in the room is either an addict or uses, and there's so many of these kids in there that are like, yeah, my parents got high together, or we did this, and and the parents are like, yeah, we used to, and it would get to me and Allie, and would be like, and these people would be like, yeah, we can't stand our parents now, we hate our parents, and Allie and I would get to each other and we're like, yeah, we get along good, we don't have issues, except she's a drug addict, and I'm not, and there are some meetings where we'd be like, raise a hand, who has used drugs or have alcoholism problems and that, and I'm the one sitting there. You see the movie I Am Legend?
Yeah.
There's times where I'm at a meeting like that, and I'm like, I am legend, because I'm literally the only one that isn't in that situation.
Yeah.
And it's not in a feel good way.
No.
It's like, holy shit, I'm the outcast here, because I didn't.
It's a weird place to have imposter syndrome.
It's totally weird.
Yeah, that's a weird fucking place for
it. Yeah, you're the outsider.
Yeah. Yeah. My first IOP, my first and only IOP, which is intense outpatient therapy. I was definitely on the more mild, moderate end of the spectrum, and even there, I felt very out of place. There are people in there saying, "Oh, it's my 5th relapse. I've lost husbands and wives and jobs, and spent time in jail." And I'm like, "Yeah, I just kind of had a blubbering mess of a breakdown and some really passive-aggressive gaslighting of my wife, which felt like the world was ending. But if I look back on it, like, the house is still standing. I still have access to my children. My wife says she still loves me, so..."
Lies.
All lies. Oh, fuck it. Especially the house standing. That's a fucking lie.
Yeah, and man, there's always a worse story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of the things that I say a lot is, somewhere out there, there's somebody that has crawled back from a worse place than you're in right now.
Yeah. Well,
that's how I know you can do it.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that she and I will talk about is because she likes fentanyl.
Yeah.
And we know what fentanyl does. There's no old fentanyl addicts.
Nope.
So
it does not happen.
Nope.
Yeah.
Well, what sucks as a parent is you have to prepare yourself for that end result.
You've had to prepare it.
Yeah. I've literally.
Yeah.
And I told you before we started, I'm like, I have prepared myself for that, and had to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Where I've walked in and she was dead on the couch.
Yep.
So it's like, well, this is what you prepare yourself for. See if you can get her back. Get 911 here, get her Narcan.
How did you prepare? How do you prepare yourself for something like that? Like
Man,
she. So at the time of this recording, Allie is still alive,
she
correct?
is. She is.
Okay.
She is alive. Every day is a challenge.
Yeah.
Literally, when my phone rings and I see her name, uh, I'm like, "Is this the call? You know, is this the one?"
Mm-hmm.
And one of these times it's going to be.
So how did you prepare yourself? Like, was it just a slow buildup of individual events that all barely ended in her not dying over a period of time that allowed like bring because that first time that you hear, oh, my daughter, needed to be Narcaned or she would have died, like that's I can't imagine how that would feel as a parent. I think on when you told me what happened the last time she OD'd and the feeling that I almost cried. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to tell the story.
yeah,
But I need to tell it. People need to know.
yeah, oh yeah,
And as a parent, you don't want to believe it because I can tell you, this has been going on for 7 or 8 years or whatever now. And when it first started out, you're like, no way, or it's a phase, or well, she'll grow out of it because there's no way my kid's an addict. I mean, I've never even touched drugs. Why would my kid be an addict? And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And every time I think it can't get worse, it gets worse.
yeah.
It just gets worse each time. So this last time, this was about 6 weeks ago, and then I found out the week before that, someone had an Narcan her, that she had gone to a club with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what the fuck's your deal? I mean, this isn't a contest to see how many times you can get Narcaned.
This is why I say the words. There's no like I don't think there's such a thing as a single rock bottom. Like listen to you talk. I heard like 4 rock bottoms in the span of 5 minutes, and I'm like,
Right.
Jesus fucking Christ, this is like.
Well, and I like I told you, I'm open about this. I'm open about it. Does it suck that it's happened? Yeah. Am I embarrassed or something about it? No, I'm not. If I can help her, I will, and I try to. But if I can help someone else, or help a parent accept that, oh shit, my kid actually is an addict. It's not. This isn't TV. I've got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned earlier, I had 2 of my friends.
Yeah, well, that was the next question I was going to ask was, how do you have the energy to help other people when you're still you're still in the eye of the storm here? Like, you're not past it, looking at it through like Solomon's fucking wisdom.
Man.
You are having to deal with it on a daily basis, and you've got people that are like, that maybe aren't specifically looking to you, but that you want to give advice or thoughts or, worst comes to worst, just saying, hey, I am also in the same storm that you are, parent of addict.
The answer is, so there's 2 answers I'm going to give you. The first one is, how do you deal with that? I'm really good at compartmentalizing. I picture my mind as like, this is going to sound dumb. I picture like the Titanic.
Sure.
The Titanic had sections.
Yeah.
The bulkhead, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
To keep it from sinking. Not that it worked, and I'm hoping mine works out a little bit better than that. But I can put it in that bulkhead and lock the door. I can put it, and I may have to go back in there. And so there's stuff stored in each of those rooms. And over the years, I would take a little bit of it, because it's too much to deal with at once, and put it away. And some of it's a disconnect too. Some of it's like, man, because when you first think about it, like, man, my kid's going to overdose and die. That's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say it gets easier, because it doesn't get easier. But after 7 years or so of this, I have accepted that there is a good chance that's going to happen. It'll crush me. I mean,
You're not immune to.
Yeah, she's my only kid. She's my girl. From the time she was born, she was my mini me, and still to she kind of still is. I mean, she's the kind. She's like, she'll call me and ask me every question. Dad, how many pieces of toilet paper do I use to wipe my ass? Are we asking this one again? It's 4, but don't rip it. And I'm making that up, but
all I can think is 2. Add 1 for all the poo you get on your hand until you don't get poo on your hand anymore.
It's literally dumb shit like that. But she's, hey, Dad, what do I do on this? Or how do I do that? Or what do you think about this? Why are you asking me that? And I think it's just, she wants to make sure that Dad's still there.
Yeah.
Because everybody else has ditched her because she's an addict.
Yeah.
I'll hear from her mom once in a while. We're not on bad terms, but we don't have reason to talk.
Sure.
I'm really worried about Allie. Well, I'm sure you are because you haven't had to deal with her for the last 8 years. Mm-hmm. You check in every once in a while when your book club decides, it's your night to be dramatic.
Right. Fuck. Shade.
Not pulling punches.
That was good, dude.
I'm not making that shit up.
I know you're not. I know you're not, dude. That's
but yet here I am. I'm like, well, I got to find a new rehabber. She's been to rehab 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Dad, I'm going to kill myself. All right, well, let's get you to the hospital because I don't want you dying in my house again now. So compartmentalizing on that one. And as far as the energy goes to deal with it, to do my daily job, to do this, I'm just fucking stubborn. I just don't quit. Mm-hmm. I just don't give up. Mm-hmm. I picture myself as like, Atlas holding the world up, and he just can't stop, So I picture myself, I'm this titan trudging through mud, water, and shit, and whatever it is, and you just got to keep going, and it doesn't matter what you're going through. Somebody else is relying on you, whether it's a kid or whether it's my friend that's like, oh my God, my daughter is having suicidal thoughts, or they're self-harming or something like that. What do I do? All right, man, we're going to have a talk right now, and it's not going to be a good talk, but this is what you need to do. And you and your wife need to have a talk about this too, because it's going to destroy your relationship if you don't communicate over this. Because it did mine to some degree too. Mm-hmm. But they would start to like, yeah, my wife wants to do this and I want to do this. Your kid's gonna have issues and you're gonna be divorced because it is a storm like we were talking about. Yep. It gets out of control fast. Yep. So when those guys have those questions or they need help or they're just like, man, it could even be a text where they ask me something and I can feel the pain, and the almost desperation, this disbelief, in their voice, or if they call me, I can feel it. I'm like, God, I gotta help these guys. I gotta tell them what I know.
Do you feel validated when you do that?
It doesn't matter if I feel validated.
I'm just asking a very human question because I feel validated when somebody asks me for help. Like I had a friend that they were struggling with the early portions of recovery in a ketamine addiction, and they reached out to me, and you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter for the story of them that I feel validated, but it gives me energy to continue, 1, being sober, and 2, continue to have the energy to be able to reinvest that in other people.
I guess I never really thought about it as validation, but sure, yes. Thinking about, I help my friends. That I feel good that I help my friends. Yeah. It sucks that they have to go through that. It sucks that I go through it.
Sure. But
if it was just me going through it and I could keep everybody else from having to go through that, I'd take that. Mm-hmm. And I don't even think I'm not that person that's like, I'm going to help everybody. I'm not. Like we talked about earlier, I'm very linear. Yeah. I'll take care of my own shit. When it comes to that, man, I don't want those people. I don't want my friends and those parents. I don't want any parent. I don't want a parent I don't even know. I don't want them to have to go through that. Yeah. But if I can tell them what I've gone through, and it gets their kid help early, mm-hmm. where they don't do 7, 8, and I don't know how many more years I'm going to have of it. Man, I'm happy to do it. I'll take the time to do it. Mm-hmm. I'll take that call when they need it. If I get that message, can you talk Yeah, yeah, I can. What's up? You okay?
Yeah.
I'll do it. I've been there, and I mean, my phone could ring right now because she's going through shit again.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you go through your addiction, or if you're going to meetings or anything like that, one of the things they tell you is like, don't. You're already married, but they'll tell people like, don't get in a relationship, and definitely don't get in a relationship with another addict.
Yeah.
Well, she does those exact things every time.
Yeah.
Into a relationship with another addict, and it turns into a disaster because the example I give her, because I'll tell her these things, she doesn't listen. The example I give is like, look, I like tacos. My friend likes tacos, and we're going down the street and we pass Taco Bell. I'm like, man, I really want tacos. My friend's like, oh, dude, we're on diets. We don't eat tacos. You're right. Next day we go by Taco Bell. My friend's like, man, Taco Supreme sounds really good. I'm like, we're on diets. But the next day we go by and he's like, Taco Supreme, Taco Supreme.
Yep.
And there we go. So, and I tell her, I'm like, I'm not a drug addict. I but I understand because I like food. And while it's not fentanyl, I get the concept. And I had to learn that. Because when she would come and be like, well, I'm depressed. What are you depressed about? Well, I'm not, I don't know. Well, what do you mean you don't know? So there's a lot of education there. And for some people, for people my age, I think, we're just like, well, why? Why are you depressed? And then eventually I find out, well, it may be nothing. It's just something that happens. There might not be a reason they're depressed, or it might be a reason they don't understand or know. Why are you doing drugs? Well, I don't know. I mean, one of her answers is, I like being high. Okay, well, how do we fix that? Well, I don't know how to fix it. She likes being high.
Yeah, there's a root to that. It's not just...
Yes, there is.
The end result is, I like being high. That's not the causal. There's a causal somewhere.
Yes.
And it could be one thing, it could be 70 things.
Right.
Like, it's so much more than just any one simple answer.
Well, and as a parent, you want to fix it.
Yeah.
But you don't know what to fix.
Yep.
Well, maybe it's this. And if they can't tell you what it is that's causing it, you can't fix it.
Yeah.
And you may not be the person to fix it anyway. It's a... For someone that didn't know much about addiction 8 years ago, I mean, like I said, I've never been a drug addict, but I've been to rehab 6 times. Yeah. I've never used drugs, but I've overdosed 5 or 6 times now. Mm-hmm. Because every time it happens to her, it happens to me. When I find her dead on the couch, I was dead on the couch for a minute. Mm-hmm. Looking at her mouth open and her no pulse and purple lips and purple eyes and cold skin. Mm-hmm. I was dead on the couch for a second.
Yep.
Everything she does, she drags me through. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure you recognize that. You probably didn't recognize it for a long time. That you drag somebody with you through it all.
I did, but it wasn't enough to stop it. So when my favorite way of talking about addiction, my favorite description of addiction is anything that brings you pleasure that has an associated negative that you can't stop compulsively doing regardless of the negative.
Yeah.
That's what an addiction is. So it could be anything. It could be booze, drugs, shopping, food, exercise, working. It could be anything.
Right. No cost is too high.
Yeah.
As long as you're getting
that validation, that feeling of being high, the full stomach, like whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things she says, that first high was so good that the rest of it is just chasing the first high. Mm-hmm. Well, what if we mix these drugs? Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned ketamine earlier.
Yep.
I think I had heard it mentioned once in in a movie where somebody's like, and this one's got ketamine in his system. That's a horse tranquilizer. I think it was in Armageddon. They mentioned something about it. One of the guys are doing the tests.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah. And so I really never paid attention to that because, a year and a half ago when some shit went down in Arizona, they're like, yeah, she was doing this, and ketamine. And I was like, the horse
tranquilizer?
Yeah, that's a new thing. They said it was a new thing. I don't know if it's a new thing or not. But they're like, they like snorted or something, or I don't even know. I honestly don't know. But I guess it's like a hallucinogenic.
It's a dissociative.
So yeah, I'm like, well, hell, don't know much about that one.
Yeah.
But I told you that story in Arizona.
Yep.
I won't go to the details on this, but
it's dark, and
it's super dark.
Like it makes me want to do the exact same thing that it made you want to do.
Yeah, and I may still.
But you're in therapy. We've talked about the the therapy that you're doing that's keeping a couple of people above ground.
Yeah, and I'm so I was one of those people that when they're like, oh, you should talk to somebody. Pff, come on, I don't need to talk to anybody. I'm a man.
Sounds very familiar.
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
Pretty much every man ever, and like right now I'm not. I did last year though, and I worked out the issues that I needed to work out. Like I told you, I took some abuse as a kid,
Yep.
verbal abuse,
Yep.
and and I carried that into adult, where instead of figuring out how to deal with that, I used that rage and that anger, and that was my source.
Mm-hmm.
It was my competitive source. It was my motivation. I mean, I would grasp that rage like it was a power. And there are times that it benefited me. With sports, I've always been a good athlete and played sports at a high level. In hindsight, there was a trail of bodies behind me because it wrecked everything I went past. And I didn't see that. I just knew that I had this power, and it got me whatever I needed to do. Whether it was hit a home run or stop the puck or whatever it was, it got me. And talking about it last year with a therapist, it helped figure out why I had that and what I could do to deal with that. And some of that stemmed not only from my issues, as a kid, but also dealing with the things with the kid, with my daughter. What happened in Arizona was bad. It fucked with her, but there's things that as a father, as anybody, you never want to see, but as a father, you never want to see happen to your daughter.
Yeah.
So it pushes you to a bad area and a bad spot. And I got to the point where I actually went to my doctor because I knew something wasn't right. And I'm not a very emotional person, but I'm trying to explain to the doctor what was going on. And I just broke down in tears. And I'm like, what's going on? I've never been like this, and I'm just in tears. And it's freaking me out because I'm just not emotional.
Yeah.
And she had me do a little test to tell me where I was on like depression and things like that. She's like, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and put you on something. I'm like, yeah. And
that'd be okay.
we tried something the first time, and I tried it for about a month, and I was just a zombie.
Yeah, that does happen.
And I'm like, hey, this is. So we switched it up, and even to this day, I still take the same thing. It's not a big dose of anything, but it keeps me just calm enough where I don't want to kill anybody. I don't rage like I would rage. I mean, the car in front of me could cut somebody else off, and I'm raging. It didn't even affect me, but it's a reason to rage because I love to rage. Whether it was an argument, well, my goal was to push that argument so it escalated into something physical because I want that rage. That's not good.
Yeah, I would consider that to be antisocial and a little destructive there, Doug.
Right, it was a little destructive. So, and there were things that caused that, but man, in the last just over a year, 14, 15 months, since dealing with that and getting on a low dose, man, it's been so much better.
Yeah.
It's interesting though because I can I'm conscious of what I take, what I do, and how I do things, but I can kind of tell when it starts to wear off a little bit. Because I can feel. I compare it to. There's a book series called The Wheel of Time. So in that book series, the magic people, they can grab the source, they can pull the source, and it like fills them with this energy and this power, and they can do all these things, and they can bring more and more power into them where they can burn themselves out. But there's also an ability where another person with that power can shield them from getting to the power, and they know the power is there, they just can't quite touch it. And for me, that rage, when that medication starts to wear off a little bit, I can start feeling that rage, and I can get
Your connection to the source is strengthening.
Yeah, I can start getting just a little bit of a trickle of it into me, and I can feel myself almost like looking around for like the power's back, and I was like, you better go take some medication, boy, because you're gonna do something stupid. And I really don't. It's not that extreme.
Sure.
But I can feel that, and I can feel it there, and it's almost taunting me, but I haven't raged. I haven't raged in over a year, and it's actually nice. It's nice to not get in that conflict. Even online with gamers that want to argue,
which is such a fertile fucking field to get into arguments.
And number one is my position at the company. I don't need to be doing that. Number two, I don't have time to do that.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, oh, that's funny. I'm going back to work. I don't get caught up in it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard. That was something hard to accept and deal with, because you're a man. Yeah, I can't do that. I don't need to talk to anybody. Man, I'm glad I finally did.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good.
Yes, and you know what? Probably saved a couple people.
Probably.
Yeah.
All right. Just a couple more questions.
Yeah, I know. I get.
No, dude. We can go on with this as long as you want. I'm fine putting.
It's a good thing we didn't record the first.
Every single
minutes.
one of you. I don't care if this is a 6-hour episode. You listen to every goddamn word of it. All right. How do you? Where are your boundaries? How do you set them up? When you and I saw each other last year, I met your daughter. It's the very first time I've met her. I instantly thought, one, she's beautiful.
She's pretty
beautiful, which is such a blessing and a curse for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because she can get the kinds of attention that are destructive to her.
Absolutely, and she loves the destruction.
That was the other thing that I could tell from that. But it was a very cursory, if she never looked at me twice with recognition, I wouldn't be surprised at all that she didn't know who I was. All right. That night, though, I noticed that when you were interacting with her, you had very firm boundaries in place. What are those boundaries now? What boundaries have you put up since that time, do you think?
So a couple things on that. First, thank you. She's a pretty girl.
Yeah, she's stunning.
She has my family's personality. We're outgoing. We can talk to anybody. We just communicate well, and she is great at it. She's also a master manipulator. Also a family trait. So she uses that power.
There's somebody right now going, Will's being manipulated by Doug.
Right
now he's being manipulated by Doug.
Right. I mean, I'm not walking out of here without a yogurt.
Straight from the tap, Doug?
Right. Yeah. No, that's not that. No. Thank you for the offer.
My pleasure.
Boundaries, though. That's probably the hardest thing. Because I had a great relationship with my parents when they were alive. I don't think I took advantage of it. I think there were times where they helped me out, and there were times that I probably should have figured some of my shit out on my own. But they were also a safety net where I could try crazy shit, like move to Seattle and take a job at 42.
Right.
So I knew I had a safety net, and I always wanted to kind of give that feeling to my kid that you can go try shit. I didn't mean fentanyl.
Right.
You can try things, and I'll be there for you. So setting boundaries has been the hard thing, because I just expect her to think like I do, and she doesn't. Yeah. She thinks about 2 hours ahead, and that's it. There's not, what am I going to do tomorrow? It's, what am I going to do in 2 hours? There's just no vision of the next day. So setting up boundaries for something like that has been one of the biggest challenges. There are times where I have good boundaries, but there's also times where I just fucking up every time. Um, she'll get kicked out of a place. Dad, can I stay with you? Fuck. Yeah, I guess. And then people around me be like, "Why are you letting her back into her apartment? Your apartment?" Well, in my mind, she's an addict. Uh, she's gonna go find a place that she can stay in, and it might be some dude that's gonna get her fucked up and abuse her, or give her something that she can't handle, and she dies, and then they just roll her out of the car into a ditch. Because we've been real close to that a few times.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that that could happen again. Like even when we move back to St. Louis, St. Louis has a high crime rate. Yeah, we're like number one per capita.
Yeah.
I try to tell her, I'm like, there are areas in St. Louis you don't go to. You just can't go there. And I had a tracker on her phone, and I looked at it one night. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing there? That is the worst part of town. Well, I was taking a friend home. I bet you were. And so it doesn't matter because, it's a bad part of town, but I can get fentanyl there and it's really cheap.
Yeah.
So, again, back to the boundaries. Man, I don't have a good answer for that. There are days where I'm stronger with my boundaries. I can tell you that since I found her on the couch 6 weeks ago, I have disconnected with her a little bit, which is hard. It kind of breaks my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, of course it does.
And I think she's disconnected a little bit too because maybe she's realized that she really fucked up. I don't know because I've thought that before. She called me this week, a couple days ago, that the guy she was seeing, who is also a drug addict, got back on something, became abusive. I'm like, physically? She goes, no, just verbally. Because I told the guy, I'm like, if you hit her, I'm going to hit you 10 times harder.
Yeah.
And I will. My record's clean, so I won't do much time. But they get into this big argument, and he's abusive, and she's like, they got him checked into a hospital, and she's like, Dad, all the stuff he's saying, I'm like, I've heard this all before. I'm like, yeah. She goes, it's all the same shit I've been saying to you for years.
She said this.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, really? She's like, yeah, I'm so sorry. So she's in tears. I'm so sorry that I treat you like that. And I don't want to be, cynical about it, but I've heard these things before.
Yep.
So it's hard for me to say, it's hard for me to be like, I accept your apology, and I didn't. I'm just like, yeah. So remember the other night when you were texting and we're saying, he's saying this to me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, take your name out and put my name in, and take his name out and put your name in. I said, and that's what you do to me. And she's like, I know, I'm so sorry. And she's going on and she's crying. And, and it was pretty emotional. But now I've disconnected enough on that where if she's finally sincere, I don't know if I can take it. I don't know if I can accept it.
Yeah.
Or believe it.
Yeah.
You have to show me more than that.
Well, apologies are wind.
Well, and I've told her, I'm like, you have financially taken a toll on me with the rehabs and the wasted money and not being able to keep a job. I mean, the same day she called me, what she didn't tell me was she also got fired that day. She had a job for about 3 or 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. First time she's worked 40 hours in maybe her entire life at 23. This is about her 7th or 8th job this year.
Yeah.
Because it lasts about 2 weeks, and it's like, whether it's a party thing or some bullshit excuse, or, they wrote me up because, I was 15 minutes late. Or I told them I was supposed to be in at 9, but my first appointment wasn't until 11, so I told them I'd be in at 11. Like, that's just not how the real world works, kid. Why? Well, I was tired. Yeah, because what are you using? And she tells me last week, well, I'm not getting high right now. I'm not doing any kind of drugs. And he is, so now I'm upset. Oh, you're upset because he's doing drugs, but if you were doing the drugs, and so I've gotten very cynical over it the last month and a half, 2 months. I think I finally hit my breaking point where I'm like, I don't know how much more I've got left in me.
Yeah.
I still can't quit. I still can't give up. But I've gotten to a point where I'm a little less, connected on it. Where I'm like, I'm disconnecting a little bit more. And she was told a couple days ago that you're going to lose your dad. You know, you you're ruining that connection. And I've also told her similar to that. I'm like, you're going to lose your dad because you're stressing me out so bad that you're going to cause health issues. Worrying about it and dealing with it. I'm like, I'm reasonably healthy right now, but man, who knows? That's 7 years of stress. Of wondering if you're coming home or if I'm getting a call that you're dead or, I'm like, you gotta stop. But addiction is addiction, and it.
There's nobody that can motivate an addict to stop. That's the problem. That's so much of the problem is you want to fix. There's no way for you to fix. It's completely. It's an internal struggle
you have to fix yourself.
that they have to come to, and say that was it. If I go any further, the things that I will lose are now more important to me than whatever feeling I'm chasing.
And I think that's the point I finally hit, like just now, is that I'm like, everything I've done, I've given everything I have. I can't fix her. She has to fix herself.
Yep.
And that's hard because I've poured 7 years into trying to fix her, and man, I have done everything. I've gone at every angle, and I've spent every penny I have. My parents, when they were alive, helped out. And I told her the other day, I'm like, I've got nothing left. I can't. Like her car's broke. I'm like, I don't have any money for you anymore.
Yeah.
I put the money on it to get it repaired the last time, a couple $1,000, like that you were going to pay me $100 a week on. You did it twice. You gave me $200 total. I'm like, well, now I'm trying to pay it off on my credit cards. I can't. I just can't.
The well
anymore.
is tapped.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was too. I told her, I'm like, I'm out. I'm tapped out.
Yeah.
So that, and maybe that the whole disconnect, it's kind of all coming together. And she called me earlier today because she was told, have you called your dad anytime recently just to see how he's doing? Did you call him to see how his trip was? Did you just call to say hi? Did you call, hey, Dad, when I get off work, you want to grab dinner, or hang out?
Yeah.
And her answer is no. No, I didn't. I guess I should. Yeah, you should, but you can't think more than 2 hours ahead. And you can't think about much more than the next high. So that's where I'm at on it.
I know that you said, I think you kind of alluded to the fact that you were worried about the enabling thing. I actually think that opening your door back up to Allie in terms of like allowing her a safer place to stay, I think that that's the right thing to do. And here's why. I don't know if you're familiar with this, you very well could be, but there's an idea that's called harm reduction. It's the idea that so I'm going to use an example instead of like giving the broad strokes on the idea. There was a clinic in Vancouver. So Jeff McMartin, if you ever listen to this, shout out Vancouver, called Insight. Insight was a location where addicts could go, and they had clean facilities for them to shoot up. They had nurses on staff with Narcan, with resuscitation. They did this because they found that when addicts OD'd, they got help faster. The help was less expensive than ambulance services and an ED visit. That all around, because they recognize that you can't break an addict out of addiction, minimizing the harm that they can do to themselves until they can get themselves out of their addictions is of high priority and of moral value. So I recognize the impetus to stand up and do it for yourself kind of thinking. I don't think it's wrong for you to open up your door and give your daughter a safe space to be. And I recognize how frustrating having to do that on a regular basis can be.
Yeah, and well, you know, I face criticism for letting her back in when I do. And
What are you gonna do? Literally,
exactly.
you literally pointed out what's she gonna do? Go find a guy
Right.
that's probably gonna give her something, and then has a much higher chance of leading to some other dire outcome in
Right.
the form of assault,
Yeah.
battery, rape,
And
kidnapping, anything.
I was in a previous relationship last year, and the person I was with, her kids are good kids. They're really not fuck ups. Mine's a fuck up. I know that. But it's cold out. She has no place to stay. She's sleeping in her car, and she came over and visited for a while and fell asleep on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told, well, she can't stay here tonight. All right, it's your house, but I'm not forgetting that.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't. I can't put my kid in that situation. Does she? Am I enabling her? Yes, to some degree, because she can come to my house and she has a place to sleep, and she doesn't have a job. She has food to eat. But man, the alternative isn't a good answer.
Yeah, I don't think the moral position is to toss somebody out.
I don't think so either.
I don't think it ever is. I
And-
don't think it ever has been. I think that we
Yeah.
convinced ourselves that it
It's
was.
it's easy to criticize somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to criticize how someone else deals with their kid who's an addict because you don't have one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's easy for I can't remember if we talked about it while we were recording or before we started recording. It's easy for people to say, "Oh, where were the parents? You know, that 17-year-old did this or did that. Where were the parents?" Sometimes it's not the parents' fault.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's a lot of times it's not the parents' fault. I didn't tell my kid to take drugs. I didn't tell my kid to get in the car with somebody that had been drinking.
Mm-hmm.
I taught my kid not to do that. But when she's 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, most of the time those kids know what's right and wrong. I don't. There are times where the bad parenting is bad parenting, but there's a lot of times where kids know from right from wrong at that point. You know, and as a society, we decide what the narrative is. You know, oh, they're 17. Where's the parents on that? Or oh, they're 17. They're bad. You know, the media decides how they want to spin it. You know, 17-year-old is does this. Oh, they're terrible. 17-year-old does this. Oh, they have bad parenting. But they might be the same thing. It's just whose version, whose spin on it.
Sure. Yeah.
But she knows what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so I see those stories and it irritates me where it's like, where's the parents on this? Those parents may have done a great job. I know myself and Allie's mom. We honestly, I feel like we did a good job raising her. You know, she had a caring family. Her mom and I didn't fight. There was nothing bad. There was no abuse. There was no.
Well,
you know.
Here's the thing: you may never have done anything overt that would be considered a where are the parents kind of moment, right?
Yeah.
You have no clue.
Right.
We can look back on it. It could have been. It could have been, like in my instance, it could have been specific withholdings at specific times in my development. It could have been specific additions of negative energy to my life at specific times. It could have been any of these things. And there probably were, and they probably weren't anything that my parents were consciously deciding to do.
Yeah.
There's no way, like, blaming yourself for those moments, like, if you sexually abused your child, that's on you. But if there were things that your child needed that you didn't know about, they didn't know about, or that they didn't need that were, lumped on them that they didn't know about and you didn't know about, there's no way to look back on that and assign blame and have that be a way to impinge on someone's morality. That's
right.
fucking backwards.
Yep.
That's absolutely wrong. Like, and the concept of blame is such a stupid concept.
Yeah.
The important thing is responsibility
And
moving forward.
I think when I was younger, and I thought I knew everything. Maybe I was in my 20s or even my early 30s. I don't know, but I thought I knew everything, and you did this wrong. You should have done this, or you did this with your kid. I'm sure I was that kind of critic. It's actually being put in a situation where like, oh shit, I think I did everything right. I did everything. I think I did everything right.
Yeah.
But man, there's a disaster. What happened? Who knows?
Yeah, and you can say internally and believe it 100%. I love my kid. I think I did as much right as I possibly could have.
Yeah.
And things can still turn out.
Yeah, and make no mistake, I love my kid more than anything on the planet, except maybe my dog. But everybody knows.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that's my girl. She's my buddy. Like you said, you met her last year. She came up. She may or may not come up this year. I told her, I'm like, hey, you should come up and say hi to everybody. Because so many people ask and want to know how she's doing, and they care. And I'm like, and that's what it's funny because that's one of the things she's always looking for, somebody to care. Like some of these guys that she'll hook up with because she thinks they love her, or she just needs that person. And I'm like, man, it doesn't work that way. And she's like, well, what about grandma and grandpa, my mom and dad? They knew each other 10 days, and they got married. They were married for 47 years. I'm like, that's a fluke. That's just not how it usually works out.
Please don't use the edge cases.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like that, or because I do a job I love. She goes, Dad, I just want a job that I love. Oh man, I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
well, what did you do before you had a job that you loved?
Jobs that I didn't love.
Yeah,
it's
not A to B. It's A to X.
Yeah,
and you got to go through shitty jobs, J, K, and L first.
Yep. And it's, as an addict, they want that fulfillment now.
Yeah,
they want instant.
Oh yeah,
and the real world doesn't work that way, so it's hard for them to stay in the real world.
Yeah. Okay. Human question.
Yeah.
Well, so I say human question because this is an easy one to blow off with the initial visceral response. Do you ever feel fuck, I forgot the word. I had it just a second ago.
Sexy?
No, I know you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't even shave your legs, and
Why
you
would
feel
I?
sexy all the time.
Fucking beautiful.
Seriously, fucking beautiful. If you could see the veins. I swear, that one, it's throbbing right at me. It's Doug, throbbing. That one's throbbing.
It is.
All right, big purple throbby motherfucker.
You see him after I play hockey.
Yeah. Get that pump on. Do you ever feel resentful of other people that are in recovery that are making the best of it because you're still stuck?
Man, I hadn't thought about that really. No, I don't. If you're strong enough to get help, if you're strong enough to stay in recovery, no, I'm not resentful of that. If something happened with my situation, but it helps somebody else, no, I'm not resentful of that. I mean, I had we talked about addiction. I mentioned in my family.
Yeah.
I had a first cousin who overdosed. Man, I think it was only a few years before my parents died. We had a lot of loss in a short period of time. She was a young, pretty girl. She had, I think, 3 young boys, and just got some strong stuff. So I guess, no, I'm not resentful. I would, when I see your story, because I remember earlier versions of you.
Hey, the last time that, or the time that we really kind of hung out and started getting to know each other, I was drunk as a fucking monkey that entire weekend.
Yeah. And I probably didn't drink anything that weekend.
I remember you coming with me to the bar. I was too drunk to remember if you were.
I just don't drink much.
Yeah.
And especially at a show because I'm kind of working.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you were, and you were happy. You were happy drunk.
Yeah.
But
then.
Yes, then. But I think think I'm more excited about seeing you. You know how you are now, and you know, seeing the podcast where because I know when I first saw it and you're talking about sobriety, I'm like, shit, I didn't think about that with you. I didn't think about how destructive it was because I saw you as happy. Will, hey, I'm happy. Let's have drinks and you know, tacos or whatever. That's what I saw. I didn't see the destructive side because you went home after that.
Mm-hmm.
I went home after that, so I didn't have to deal with what happened behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, it was my wife that saw the destructive side. She is you
sure.
in my story.
I 100% believe that.
Yeah.
But now I know how the behind the scenes looks. So no, I'm not resentful. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for her because I know what a person deals with. You know, so no, I'll never be resentful.
I think it would be okay if you were. Like
Yes.
I think that's one of those negative emotions that is for somebody that goes through what the family of addicts who are not in recovery or in recovery have to go through. I think it is absolutely justifiable that they become resentful. Not that they become blinded by it, but that they experience that emotion in a short term. I think that that's okay.
I think I have every right to be resentful and angry.
Yeah, I do too.
I absolutely do. And maybe there are days where I am to some degree, but I don't think I want that to blind me from, you know, what the path I have to take or what I have to carry forward. You know, I still believe that there's going to be a day where I still believe there's going to be a day where my kid's going to come and say, thank you. You saved me. And nobody else did.
I want that for you both. I want that desperately for you both.
Yeah. And I'm trying, I'm waiting for it. You know, I'm not giving up on it. But, fuck. Yeah. You know, but that's why I keep doing it. Because I believe that day can still happen. So, as a parent, you know, of an addict, that's the day you want.
Yeah.
So, sorry. I knew at some point it was going to get to me going through all this.
You don't have to say it. You don't have to apologize for anything, man. Yeah. Not even a little.
But I also, you know, with your podcast, I knew there was a day that we were going to talk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I knew that, like, when you sent me the list of questions, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a good one. You know, this is, hopefully it helps somebody. You know,
so.
Or at least gets them thinking what they need to do. And, man, if it helps somebody, I'm happy about that.
I want light shine on this, man. I want light shining on this from every hopeful and kind angle.
Yeah, and I mean, if somebody's going through this, I don't even need to know you. But if you need to talk, fucking find me.
Yeah.
Because I don't have an issue talking about it. You know, I'm not embarrassed. I'm not ashamed. Let's deal with this shit. You know, let's get your kid help or let's get your loved one help.
Yeah.
Let's not find them in a ditch. Let's not have them die at 23.
Yeah. All right, Doug. All right.
How was that?
This has been great.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna have a pretty good one. So yeah,
I can't thank you enough, man, from the bottom of my heart.
No, I appreciate being on and nothing but respect for me, you know, for what you do, and I'm sure for what your wife had to deal with. You're fortunate because she was there for you.
Yeah, I know.
That's the difference. You know, a lot of addicts don't.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they don't.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal to me. You know, so I'm not saying it because she's in the room.
The audience didn't know she was in the room.
Yeah, I know. But
Maybe from the door opening thing. Don't try to slip your own messages in here, okay? This is between Doug and I.
Yeah, you're muted.
Wife.
I'm just saying you can cut it out. And, you know, you can cut that line
No cutting things out. We're not cutting things
No,
out. All right.
this is uncensored.
Yeah.
The whole time?
Last thing. Is there anything that you would like to put out there? It can be gaming related. It can be non-gaming related. Whatever you want. Anything that is in your head.
God, sure. I got a couple things. If you're a wargamer, check out Warmachine Mark IV. We've got a new edition coming out. It's a great time to check out our game. A lot of people think we're a big company. We're not. We're a small company. We're just trying to make cool shit. If you're a hockey fan, don't support the Avalanche. But also my Blues have lost like 6 games in a row, so pick somebody good.
Back to back.
Yeah, it could happen. I'm kind of waiting for the Blues to give me a call because our goaltending has not been good. So I usually keep my pads in the car just in case.
It could happen.
That text comes through.
It could happen.
We saw the Zamboni driver a couple of years ago get a win.
Yep.
So I'm never giving up on that either. And then lastly, man, if you're having some mental health issues, especially the guys out there, I know we don't like to talk about it or we don't like to deal with it, but go do it. Go take a chance. It doesn't have to be something everybody knows about or you're put on social media. Try it out, because I tried it once before and it didn't work out for me. I thought it was the dumbest thing in the world. This is never going to help me. But it actually took me hitting some rough spots to truly give it a chance. I never thought I would, but mental health is an issue. I'll say that I get made fun of a lot because I'm a huge Imagine Dragons fan, and I take so much shit for it. But
I thought you were going to say Nickelback. You're fine, man. Imagine
No.
Dragons is fine. You didn't say
That's-
Nickelback.
But the lead singer of Imagine Dragons, Dan Reynolds, deals with depression, and he's familiar with addiction, and he's lost loved ones, and he just missed him and his wife were on the verge of a big divorce, and they were able to work it out, and he's super open about mental health and getting help and dealing with addiction and things like that, and he's a great singer too. But the fact that he's open about it, I think has affected and influenced so many young people, because they see this guy, this larger than life figure, talking about it, and so it makes them feel like they can talk about it a little bit more. And while I'm not on that stage, if there's some gamers out there or some hockey guys out there, and I know you guys are big and you're strong and you're badasses, but man, if you're not feeling it, go ahead. It's okay to talk to somebody about it, and life could be better. Don't hurt yourself or hurt your loved ones. I know it's an uncomfortable subject, but talk to somebody. Like I said, I've had friends, because I'm open about it now. I've had friends call me with whether it's they need some help or their daughters or what do we do, or yes, talk to somebody about it. I think as a species we like to help each other, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my message.
I like it.
It's okay. I mean, they have a song. It's okay to not be okay. Yeah.
All right, Doug.
I'm good.
It's okay to be a
I can't thank you enough.
fan.
What's that? Oh, it's okay to be an Imagine Dragons fan, or it's not okay?
No, it is okay.
Okay, just checking. Just don't be an Avs fan.
But-
Why? Fuck. The two of you. It's like you are ganging up on the host right now because I'm trying to finish that show, and you're like, oh, I guess I'll
Can
pull
we
in a snarky
please wrap
aside.
this up?
God damn.
I need a yogurt and a nap.
You need a yogurt and a nap.
More-
I need you.
All right, Doug. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you very much for being so incredibly vulnerable. I always go into these interviews hoping for that, but never expecting it. And this is, once again, the interview episodes are always my favorites. And I can't thank you enough for being here for it.
I appreciate you having me. You know that. We talk here and there for a handful of years now. I didn't know what to expect either, and most of my interviews don't go like this. So but I think it's something you have to be vulnerable about. I think people need to see that part of it. So I appreciate you having me. I hope it helps out somewhere.
Awesome. Me too, man.
Thank you.
Too. All right, let's get to that yogurt.
Yogurt time.
You've just listened to another episode of the Save vs. Poison podcast. If you liked what you heard, please follow us, like, and subscribe on Twitter at @VS_save, on Facebook at the Save vs. Poison podcast, and streaming live on Twitch at twitch.tv/SVP podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay safe, everyone.